Alright, welcome back to the Chartreuse Leprechaun. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I unfortunately recorded this week's episode of Subnautica without saving a separate Chartreuse Leprechaun intro, which we're going to start airing on Mondays, or on Wednesdays for the Subnautica. And we're going to have, on Saturdays, we're going to have the Chartreuse Leprechaun intros for This War of Mine, which are the current two pieces we're doing on the channel. But this one, well, we're going to be a little different today. We're going to do some background on me and the Chartreuse Leprechaun. So first of all, my name is Mark. Hi. I'm a 450-ish somebody who says on the channel, former military, singer, songwriter, unprofessional. I haven't released anything, so don't go looking for it. Although we may put some of that up on the channel at some point, just for fun. We'll see. I'm a father of 5. I have one veteran, and her husband is a veteran. And we have, my wife and I have 4 other children. They're all doing fine. One of them is going to be the source of this week's Chartreuse Leprechaun story. So, the Chartreuse Leprechaun, I mentioned it in episode 1 that this started, and even my kids don't remember how this started, but it was basically something on the lines of what happened to the dog, my toy, the tree, the neighbor's house, whatever it might have been. And I just started spinning off stories that involved a Chartreuse Leprechaun. The most memorable of them all, for me. I'm sure my children all have their favorites, one they particularly remember. This is my favorite, and it involves one of our children who he'd been to a writer's conference, and he came home and was Skyping with one of the people that he'd met there, and the subject of spontaneous writing came up, and he said, "Oh, my dad does that with a Chartreuse Leprechaun," and the other person said, "Oh, what?" And he made the mistake of turning his computer around to point at me and said, "Dad, explain to her the Chartreuse Leprechaun." Now, again, it's always random characters, colors, but the one consistent is the Chartreuse Leprechaun. So I don't remember the exact characters and colors, but it went something like the purple rhinoceros and the blue fish were running down the road carrying a baby. And the green lion saw them, tripped them, and they flew through the air and went into the side of this car. Oh my God, the dent in that Mercedes was just epic. But they were out cold on the sidewalk, and the Chartreuse Leprechaun came walking by and saw the baby and picked it up and ran off. And he left the baby on our doorstep, and at this point I pointed at my son and said, "But he didn't leave any instructions, so we just did the best we could." Now, of course, he's looking at me like, if looks could kill, I would not be here telling this story. And she is on the other end of his computer just laughing. It was cool. So that's the Chartreuse Leprechaun, and that's more or less how it always comes about. I just suddenly get some story that goes through my head, and I tell it, and that's the deal. So that's how the Chartreuse Leprechaun came around. That's what the Chartreuse Leprechaun is all about. So as I mentioned a moment ago, the general plan here. On Fridays, for now, we're doing Subnautica. On Saturdays, we're going to have a Leprechaun teaser video, if one becomes available, for Monday's broadcast of This War of Mine. And then on Wednesdays, we're going to have a Leprechaun teaser for for Subnautica, rather. Or we'll have one of these discussion videos, and we'll just have to see how that goes. So, among other things, there's technical issues going on around here. I built my computer on a budget because I needed a new computer. I accidentally bricked mine. The faceplate on the computer tore off while I was doing an upgrade, and it just wasn't possible to sew to put the wires back on. The entire connector and the plug tore completely off the PC board, and rather than call HP and get a new little corner of the PC board for that, I just took my Christmas money and went out and built my own computer. And it consists of a Ryzen 5 3400G, which means integrated graphics, and that is the source of most of my troubles at the moment. Because it's integrated graphics, it'll play a lot of games, and I can capture them using the Xbox Capture DVR function built into Windows 10, but I cannot use OBS because that requires encoding on top of what the computer is already doing, and there's just not enough headroom for it. So unfortunately, until I can resurrect a Ryzen 5 2600G that I have back in the apartment in St. Louis, I'm currently in Texas because of COVID-19, we'll just have to make do with what we've got. So that unfortunately is the way it is. So let's see, what else do we have to do? Oh, the editing. I'm currently using Lightworks, which is a free program online. There is a pay version. I'm not paying for it, and that's my video editor. I'm also using Audacity, which is an audio editor. I'm using the free version, and when I finally get it working, I'm going to be using OBS for my broadcast and the work inside of that. So the big limiter to all of this, in a word, is disability. I've mentioned in episode 1 that I have some health issues going on, and they've been going on for about 10 years. In 2010, I had what was diagnosed as a small brain stem stroke caused by a small hole in my heart. They called it small. Technically, it's large. It was a 1.1 centimeter hole, and anything over 1 centimeter is large. Now, how I got to be age 49 before they found this even existed is an unknown. We don't know. The doctors don't seem to know. There is some guess that there was a small hole there and then it tore because of age and the weakening of tissue with age and things of that nature, but the truth is nobody knows. Unfortunately, there have been some side issues with that, and they cropped up almost immediately, and it took about 5 years to get a diagnosis on it, but it's called hemiplegic migraines, and it's as ugly as that sounds. Hemiplegic literally means half paralyzed. So essentially what happens, I want you to think of the most difficult workout you have ever had in your life and be that tired on exactly one half of your body. Draw a line right down the middle and choose left or right. And then on top of that, add whatever migraine symptoms you want to come up with. Brain fog, headache, nausea, visual disturbances, audio disturbances, and more. Hemiplegic migraines, by the way, is one of 12 migraine variants that are floating around out there, and they're all ugly, and they're all nasty. Side note, by the way, you say the word migraine, everybody thinks headaches. It's not always a headache. Sometimes it can be anything. It can be just general fatigue. It can be all kinds of things, but 6 of one, half of the other, it's nasty. But it causes some ancillary problems, one of which is wearing a headset like this one, or let me get it in the can. There it is. Wearing a headset like this one on the ear on this side, on my left side, pushes in on those nerves, and it creates it's something called allodynia, which is basically a pain where you shouldn't have it. You can get it from brushing your hair. You can get it from the wind blowing on your face. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It just is, and it sucks. And I hope nobody out there has it. And by the way, before I go too much further, do not take anything I am telling you as medical advice. I have to say this is YouTube, but do not take anything I am saying as medical advice. I am not a doctor. I am telling you about my journey, and I hope you're not on one like it, but if you are, I hope you find a good doctor. Let's see. Yeah, allodynia triggers the HM, which, yeah, it starts as just kind of a weakness and a dullness in the face, and then cascades down the entire left side of my body, top to bottom. And there are days I spend all of it in bed or wishing I was in bed. Most recently, though, and this is where the problems are coming from here, is something called thoracic outlet syndrome. Now, we're guessing that in the course of all the stuff that was going on with my left side, that I'll demonstrate on my right, the nerves got pinched up in here. There's 3 places. Let me back up. The nerves come out of your cervical column and come through the scalene muscles in the side of the neck. Then they go between your collarbone and your first rib. Then they go under the pectoralis minor, and then they go down your arm. And theory is that because of the hemiplegic migraines going on for so long, and a continual weakening of the left side that it just clamped down on all those nerves, and I was having shooting pain. I couldn't reach across a desk. I couldn't pick up a pencil. It was awful. Anyway, the pain on that got so bad that I eventually had to have surgery, and they cleared up all 3 places. The muscles in the side of the neck were twice the size they should have been. There was extensive scar tissue in the area of the first rib and the collarbone. And yeah, it was just ugly. Well, the downside of that is I still have numbness in my fingers when I do things. I can't do I think it's a 3-minute guitar exercise. I can't go 30 seconds to a minute on a keyboard typing. I can do ASWD game commands for a slightly longer period of time, but sooner or later it backs up the arm and gets into the shoulder. And if you've listened to any of my Subnautica videos, I'm sure you've heard my voice get hoarse towards the end. It doesn't take long. On the bright side, everything got better. On the downside, it didn't fix the hemiplegic migraines. We hoped that it would. It didn't. But we've got some good stuff, and that's what I want to talk about now, my goals, my hopes. One of the things I'm trying to do with these videos and these games is re-engage my brain. Several years ago, I had a neurologist who actually told me gaming is good for getting the brain re-engaged. So I'm wanting to use that to my advantage. Not quite going like I hoped, but that's what I want. I want to improve. I want to engage. I want to learn new stuff, which is the other reason I'm doing the whole YouTube thing. And I hope you guys will continue to struggle with me as I try and solve all the audio issues that go with the Xbox Capture DVD thing or DVR thing. The restored hand and arm function. My fingertips go numb. I lose dexterity. I've got there's a nerve reaction in the deltoid shoulder area. I don't know what's causing that, but I want to get through that. So I'm trying to use more keyboarding to do that. So this is a lot of therapy. And finally, my goal is to get back to work. I haven't been to work because of this whole the thoracic outlet thing since January of 2019. Yeah, that's right. Almost 18 months. And let me tell you something. It gets old sitting around with nothing to do. So I don't have a timeline for it. I did most of these videos over the course of a month before I started airing them. I'm still trying to stay 3 to 4 weeks ahead of where I'm at. And you know what? We'll just have to see where it goes from here. But here's the other thing I want to get into. The reason I keep plugging along through all of this, the reason I haven't given up is Christ. You can take that any way you want, but years ago I surrendered to Christ. Not to a religion, not to a bunch of rules, to Christ. And because I can't fix this, I can refuse to give in to depression, fear, failure, etc., because that's the spiritual act of someone who has surrendered to Christ. I do not have to live under the authority of that end. I don't. I am a born-again child of the one true God, by faith, through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. I am forgiven. I don't have to submit to all that crap. There's no other word for it. My sin is forgiven before God. I will still have to face judgment for whatever I do since I came to Him. And I will be rewarded accordingly. I am not perfect. You can ask my children. In the course of all of this, I let anger and bitterness and a whole bunch of things get hold of me for a while, and I drove them away from God. I drove them away from me. But I have an eternal hope, and it's not based on what I do. It's based on what He did for me. That hope is mine. That hope is for anyone who will surrender to Him. No, it will not be an easy road. You will face sorrow. You will face loss. You will face problems. You will possibly face death. Christians do it all over the world every day. That doesn't change the fact that He loves you and He died for you so that you could be with Him forever. Because that is the ultimate death, is to be separated from God, which is what happens if you die without Christ. So, with all that said, I hope you will take the time to find someone who can draw you a better picture of Christ than I have in, 2 minutes. Someone who can paint that picture so that you realize he is everything I've said and more. But most of all, I hope you will stay tuned with the Chartreuse Leprechaun, because I expect to have a lot of fun here. I expect to have some fun with our 3 videos that we're doing. I expect to have, or our 2 videos, our 2 games, and the ones that will come after that, because I know that I can do one that is keyboard based and one possibly one or controller based, I'm not sure. And I can do one that's mouse based, like this war of mine. And I've got several candidates, as I mentioned in the intro video, for this war of mine, so we'll see where it goes. We have a lot of videos ahead of us, we have a lot of fun ahead of us, and I hope you stick around for the journey. So in the meantime, again, my name is Mark, I'm here for the Chartreuse Leprechaun. Thanks for joining the channel, you have a great day and a great week.